This is Hue Review, so let's review. So this is the very first episode of Hue Review. And yes, I am wearing shorts. My goal with these videos is to review every single paint color that exists. And honestly, what better color to review than Ultra White by Benjamin Moore? I'm being sarcastic, but also not, because Ultra White used to be one of my most used paint colors in my entire catalog for one main reason, but we'll get to that later on with how I would use this color. So the way that I want to do these videos is give you three different sections: vibe, versatility, and then finally my verdict. Because I do want to give you my opinion on whether I would use this color in my home or not, because I'm sure that's valuable to someone out there. So to start things off, let's talk about the vibe. What is this color all about? What is it going to give you? Well, the vibe's pretty simple here. Ultra White. This is going to be a very clean and stark, bright white for your paint projects. So anytime you would need something like that, Ultra White should be pretty high up on your list, I would say. The LRV is right here. Light reflectance value. This color reflects a ton of light, and you can see that based on how bright it is being a white paint color. It isn't the brightest white that Benjamin Moore makes, but honestly, you might mistake it for being the brightest white because of its name and also its brilliant quality to it. It does have a very slight cool undertone to it, which can sometimes translate to a bit of a blue hue, and I think that becomes more apparent if you use it on larger spaces like your walls and just in rooms in general. But if you kind of limit it to just using it on frames and doors and woodwork, then I think you're in okay shape. You won't really see a lot of that blue coming through. There also is a tiny bit of a gray quality that isn't as noticeable as some other off-white colors, which I'm sure we'll get to eventually. But if I were to sum this color up, what you're getting here is a very clean, slightly cool white. For the sake of this video, I wouldn't even call it an off-white. It's just kind of white. And I think that's kind of what it was designed to be at the end of the day. So that's the vibe. What about this paint color's versatility? Let's start with the interior side of things. I would say Ultra White has a high level of versatility, mainly because there are so many things in your home inside that you might want to be painted white. Starting with, of course, the baseboards, your doors, your frames. Largely based on my experience, people still like white woodwork, and Ultra White is white. So if that's what you're looking for, that's a good thing. But not only that, you can also talk about ceilings. So your ceilings typically can act as your fifth wall if you do want to paint it a nice color or even an accent color. I recommend going with something bright and white because it's not going to affect the color of the space. If you have an overhead chandelier, let's say, and your ceiling's red, well, that light from the chandelier is going to bounce off of that red ceiling and then kind of give your whole room a reddish glow, which is, you know, if you're developing photos, I guess a red dark room might be kind of cool, but in any other case, maybe not the best idea. So that's why Ultra White, or any bright white for that matter, is a good idea, because it's going to not only reflect the most amount of light back into your room, but it's also going to give you a more neutral, clean light. Now, it's not perfectly versatile in my opinion, because I would never use Ultra White on walls. That's just me personally. And that's for two reasons. One, it's a bright white. If you've ever painted walls white before, you may have noticed that it takes a lot of coats to get it covered properly, and Ultra White is no different. Not a huge fan of it. And also, if I was going to paint a wall white, I wouldn't necessarily go with something that's stark or just even a bit cool leaning like Ultra White is. I would probably opt for something a little bit warmer and maybe something with a little more depth. So yeah, not perfectly versatile, but I would still give it that high degree just because of all the other use cases for it. Now, moving on to its exterior versatility. So if you're thinking of using Ultra White outside, I would maybe say this is a mid versatility level. Now, for the same reason, I'm not a huge fan of using bright whites on walls. I'm also not a fan of using them on the outside of a house, like main body color, because bright whites look way brighter outside. So even if you want that white house look, you probably don't need the brightest, cleanest, starkest whites out there. And in fact, you may also want to go warmer too, because sunlight is surprisingly cool. Like, it cools down colors visually so they feel a little more blue leaning. So that beautiful white house you were envisioning painted Ultra White may end up looking more like a really bright powdery blue. You have to be very careful with exterior colors, because Oftentimes they're some of the most expensive projects that we do in paint. But there's a reason I didn't put it low versatility. I still think if you're using it as a trim color, just to sort of accent things and highlight things, then I think it's fine, because then it's just clean white, pure white, really can't go wrong. It just probably wouldn't be my most used exterior white, let's put it that way. But I gotta give it points for its simplicity and its clarity as a paint color. Okay, so what's the verdict? What do I actually think of ultra white? How I would use this color? Well, if we're talking about our arrangement in the palette pyramid, main color, support color, finishing colors, I would almost always put ultra white in that support category. This is not going to be a main color in any stretch of the imagination for me. It is absolutely a supporting color, a white that can go with a number of different options. Like, this is a very flexible color, especially in the interior side of things. And before, this would have been my number one trim color option for a lot of people. And in fact, I used it as a baseboard, door, and frame color for many, many years because of its cleanliness and its just sleekness, especially when we were using a lot more grays. That was sort of the trend when people were going a little more cooler with their color schemes. Ultra white was just a very reliable paint color that I always ended up using. So really good in that sense. And yeah, you could absolutely use it as a ceiling color as well as your woodwork color. Just would not recommend it for walls. So that's how I would use it. But would I? Would I use ultra white in my home currently? No. I would not. Personally, I have moved away from the cooler leaning whites, even as a woodwork color for my baseboards and all that. I do like a touch of warmth because everything else in my house is warm leaning. I don't really see a reason for me to ever want to use this paint color in my home. But that's just me. What about you? You like ultra white? Do you want me to make a color palette on it? Let me know in the comment section down below, because we're gonna start making palette pyramids for all of you based on the colors that we review. And also, we got another video right over here.